Hi, welcome everyone. I'm Stephen D. I'm one of the residents of the Monastic Academy. I've been training in my current stint there for about a year and a half now. And I was also one of the founding members back in 2013, not at the start of this thing, but at the start of the residential training program. This actually makes me really happy to not be the oldest, in terms of involvement in the program person in the room right now. We have a great community here, so I really appreciate that and want to continue to work with you. And so I wanted to talk today about first of all, the training that I just completed. So over the past month, I spent 3 weeks on retreat, working with some world-class meditation teachers who are also kind of related to this organization, this thing that we're doing here. So I started with about 10 days or so of retreat with Harada Roshi, Soryu's teacher, out in Tahoma Zen Monastery in Washington State. And with Soryu as well, he was there as one of the retreatants. Then followed that up with a week-long retreat with Shinzen Young at the Monastic Academy out in Lowell. So this is amazing in a lot of ways. These are kind of as I see it, the source in some ways of the training that we're doing here. Harada Roshi is it's been an influence on Soryu, has sort of like helped him along his path. And Shinzen and Soryu have worked together to create the language around training that we use at the center. So between the two of them, some really powerful roots there. So I'm going to talk about my experiences there, and also with the more general theme of how to work with teachers, how to work with a bunch of different teachers, which is a theme that's probably relevant to a lot of us because Soryu's traveling, and so there are different teachers each week up here to work with, and also at the residents of the Monastic Academy, all are alternating teacher each day. So for us, we get to have a different person giving us feedback, training, and conducting practice interviews each day. So I've gotten a lot of practice recently discovering what does it mean to work with a teacher? How can I work effectively with different teachers? How can I get the most out of this for me, for them, for the world? So I'll talk a little bit about that. So first I want to spend a little bit of time just on storytelling about my time on retreat, because it was a powerful time for me, and hopefully maybe of some use to you to hear about some of it. At very least, it'll be fun. So I'll start with Tahoma. And so I did there they call it a koseshin and an oseshin. Koseshin, so seshin is a practice period, like a week of intensive practice where, the main thing that you're doing is working on being enlightened. In some way or another, to some degree or another. And a koseshin is somewhat like our work week at the Monastic Academy. So you get up early, you chant, you sit, you interact with the teacher, but then during the day you're doing what's called samu, or work. So basically your practice is weeding or cooking things or doing other sort of usually manual labor like that. And then you have some more free time for study or whatever else you want to do. So that was a few days, and then that was followed on by a week of oseshin, which is somewhat like our awakening weeks, where so there's less free time, there's less work time, and there's less sleep time. And all of that time is replaced with sitting time, practice time. So you spend most of the day in formal practice doing a technique, sitting or having an interview with the teacher or that sort of thing. So just to give you a sense for what the overall skeleton was like, the way that I approached practice while I was there was first of all, just to completely as I was able, give myself to the training, receive the Roshi's teaching, receive the way of life there without bringing in my own stuff into it. I succeeded in that to some extent, and got some benefit from that. And within that, I was working specifically with bringing intensity into practice and then making practice constant. So that every moment of the day, from when I wake up to when I go to sleep, and even while I'm asleep, I'm doing formal technique as best as I was able to. So I basically wound up coming to two different strategies for that. So when I was sitting and when I wasn't sitting. When I wasn't sitting, my approach was hang on to any scrap whatsoever of practice, like anything at all. Basically, my goal is don't let the momentum die completely. So keep some awareness in my feet. I'm probably not going to be able to count my breaths, but at least keep some awareness in my feet. If I can count my breaths, great, count my breaths. If I can extend the exhale, great, extend the exhale. But the main thing is just anything at all. And then during the sitting periods, I'd work on building momentum. So throwing myself into the practice, each breath, exhale as fully as possible. I should say in general, the approach to practice, the goal I had for practice in a big scope there was to cut off all thinking by using the breath, using the posture, using all of my energy, using everything I had in my body. That's what I was working on. And so during the sitting periods, do that as best as I was able, and just go for it. And so the main obstacles that showed up were like, sleep. I have a tendency to nap, to go to sleep often. Anytime I'm able to, I will. So I decided that instead of sleeping, I was going to take nature walks. There's a little path near the monastery. And so I would go on that path, walk around a pond each day, and just kind of keep walking between the practice periods, basically so that I wouldn't lie down. I knew that if I didn't do that, then I was probably going to go into the place where I was sleeping, which was the zendo, but still I was going to go into the zendo. And if I was going to go into the zendo, I was probably going to sit down. And if I was going to sit down, I was probably going to lie down. And if I was going to lie down, I was probably going to fall asleep. So walking, gonna walk through the forest, here we go. And early in the Kosashin, I was walking along, pardon me, I forgot to set my phone to silent. Set your phones to silent, good reminder. So I was walking along during the Kosashin, and one day I just remember looking at the ground and noticing, totally by chance, an enormous maple leaf, like the size of my torso, like really big maple leaf. Walking along, and, kind of doing the technique, and then bam, what, what tree made this? It was, I felt like I immediately had to know, like what tree could make such a magnificent leaf? And so I looked up, looked around, and saw just off in the distance this huge, beautiful, just incomprehensibly graceful maple tree. And incidentally, I actually don't think that's the one that made the leaf. I think the tree that made the leaf was a somewhat smaller, younger tree on the other side of the path from me, but that had much bigger leaves. But it led me to that tree, and I feel very grateful for it, for doing that. Because I got to meet that and sort of explore this question of how do you relate to a tree? How do you be with a tree? How do you connect with a tree? It's a living thing. It doesn't have a brain, but it's still alive, and it's nurturing you. It doesn't have a brain the way that, it's not made of the same stuff as our brains are made of. But still, there it is. It's living, it's interacting, it's supporting me in the practice. What can I do for it? So I decided that I was going to make it an offering, actually. I went back to Happy Town, which is the name that that Tahoma gave to their coffee and snacks area. So I went back to Happy Town and got some cheddar cheese popcorn and some ginger peach tea. I made some ginger peach tea, and then I took my cup and my popcorn and walked out into the woods and put some popcorn at the base of the tree, poured a little bit of tea over it, and then sat with the tree for a little while. And I don't know anything about anything. I'm aware that there are things like confirmation bias. You expect to see what you expect to see, and you see what you expect to see, and all that. But anyway, the next day, I was going on my nature walk and sat down on a stump somewhere and saw some dragonflies dancing in front of me, hovering, floating around. Kept going, sat down again, saw a duck take off from the water, make a big splash, make a lot of noise. Kept going, saw some slugs on the ground. There are slugs out there. You usually see like 1 or 2 a day. I saw like 3 or 4 or 5 that day. Saw like spiders and trees, and I was, at a certain point I was like, maybe the tree is making an offering for me. Maybe the tree is saying, here you go. And I was feeling really excited about this. And then I kept going and like nearly stepped on a snake that scooted out of the way, and kept going, and there was a big banana slug. Kept going. So who knows, but making offerings for trees sometimes goes well. Without implying any particular like causal structure for that, I don't know. Give it a shot sometime, see what happens. But I'd come back to that tree again and again, and sort of as I was continuing to work with this constant practice, always practicing, I'd try to sit with it at night. So I used it as my yaza spot. Yaza is known as night sitting in Zen. It's a celebrated practice, very much encouraged. And I kind of had this, ambition, idea, dream, what have you, that I was going to sit all night long, and it was going to be great. By the end of the week, I was going to work my way up to sitting all night long, and then I was going to break through and attain enlightenment, and it was going to be so good. I was going to save the world and tell all my friends. And that didn't happen. It just didn't happen. It just didn't happen. Hard to be unattached from all experience. It's just hard. I sat down with the tree at night, and then there, I don't know what they were, maybe some dogs or wolves or coyotes or something, but, at 10 p.m. with no light, sitting under the tree, they sounded like hell dogs from another realm, screaming. And I heard them, and they kept sounding like they were getting closer, and I, just found myself walking away from the tree. Like, I'm just gonna walk away from the tree and not do that. And so, one of the really interesting things about it was how easy it was to throw myself into that practice, how easy it was to receive the teachings there and go along with what's going along there, or with whatever's happening there, in contrast to what it's like back home for me at Monastic Academy. Out there, my theory is that you simply don't have your stuff with you. So it's easier and also less deep. You don't have all of the complex relationships with other people and the preferences and attachments to the way of doing things. So I'd go out there and, it's like, okay, here's the way we're going to wash the dishes today. It's going to go like this. Great. Tomorrow it might be different. Who knows? And I could see out there, the longtime community members being told, okay, we're going to wash the dishes this way today. And like, what do you mean we're going to wash the dishes? No, we've washed the dishes this way for 15 years. You telling me we're going to wash them this way? No. And just to appreciate the symmetry of that, it'd be like, yeah, I've been there. Gonna be there again soon. It's gonna be great. But anyway, it's good, it's fun, it's worthwhile, I think, to get a taste of what depth is like, to get a taste of what progress in practice is like, so then I can go back home and work on that with a higher difficulty level. So I did. So I went back home, and after that, found myself doing this retreat with Shinzen Young at the Monastic Academy, and it was really hard. Kind of funny, actually. Like, to compare the two teachers, the way that they approach things, Harada Roshi is sort of the notoriously frightening one, the relentless one. The like, just cut off your body and mind now, die completely now. What are you waiting for? What are you doing? And Shinzen is, by comparison, I think anyone who knows him knows his basic approach is to validate and empower you. Wherever you are, whatever's happening in practice, it's great, and you're doing great, and here's why. And yet, I go back to the Shinzen retreat, and things are very difficult. I'm fighting with the schedule. The schedule is the same schedule as the Osashin, but this time it's a problem. Last time it was fine. Now it's, what are you doing? You can't run a retreat this way. You have to do it a different way. So to receive that, to be on both sides of that in that way was kind of nice. My parents were actually on the Shinzen retreat. It was their first retreat. They made a ton of progress, and it was really important for them and for me to be there. A kind of benchmark or checkpoint in a really long journey from being uneasy about me doing this whole monastic thing to finding benefit in the practice and eventually having profound experiences as a result of it. So I feel really grateful for that. And also it was really nice to just ignore them for a week. Just kind of have them be like more warm bodies in a room. My interaction with them is as connected and loving and deep as it is with every other person on that retreat, which is to say that I'm not even looking at them. And they're not looking at me. We're just doing our thing and being connected without having to make it any different from how it is. So, and I stayed up all night. There was one night I stayed up all night on the Shinzen retreat. It was horrible the next day. Christopher's laughing, he was there with me. But I did it. And so, good experience all around. But these two teachers were like totally opposite in a lot of ways in how they were teaching and in what they were telling me to do. Completely different, Harada Roshi's entire instruction was, your true self is the thing that you don't have to think about. So in order to know your true self, just don't think. Just stop thinking. Stop thinking and you will realize your true nature. No thinking, don't understand for a moment why you're practicing, don't understand how to practice, just do it. Just keep doing it, use your body, use the posture, cut off all thinking and go. So I had that for 10 days, and then I came back and had 7 days of, the theme of the Shinzen retreat was literally thinking. It was literally working with thinking. That was the whole week. And somehow this was great. This actually didn't even feel like a jolt to me in terms of practice. It didn't feel like, oh no, I was going all the way one direction, now I'm going all the way the other direction, this is hard. It just felt, okay, now I'm this is what practice is like now. And Shinzen actually talked about this, how there's basically two types of equanimity. So there's foreground equanimity and there's background equanimity. There's equanimity with turning towards sensation, experience, and then there's equanimity with turning away from it. And regardless of which of those you're cultivating, you're still building that equanimity. So I got to see that in practice, to have spent all of that time cultivating background equanimity with my mind, totally ignoring my mind, totally disregarding it to the best of my ability, and then to turn towards my mind and work with it and find that actually, this is great. I'm not stuck on all of this stuff so much. I can just kind of let it happen. And so to see that those two skills actually do work together, they do form one thing. And so I also want to, so I think this is connected, but it may not be obvious how it's connected, so let's see where it goes. But this is related to me, to the theme in general of working with different teachers. That there are different teachers. In particular, I'm actually pretty interested in the skill of, don't take this the wrong way, but working with bad teachers. I'm interested in that skill in particular. And by bad, I don't mean evil, I don't mean malicious. I also don't mean permanently, unchangingly bad forever. But, you know, let's face it, the path to being a skilled teacher consists entirely of being an unskilled teacher and being progressively less and less unskilled. So if we want to support a world with skilled teachers in it, then it's useful for us to work with unskilled teachers to discover how we can do that. I hope if nothing else, I'm at least giving you that opportunity tonight. But how do you do it? So I actually think that working with unskilled teachers isn't too different from working with skilled teachers. It's the same kind of a thing. It's the same skill that you're developing, and I think what you're developing is the ability to meet them where they are, and in doing so, give up your own perspective. The service that a teacher of any sort is giving you is an opportunity to experience anything, something other than your own preferences and ideas, something other than your own approach to the world, to practice. It's something else. And so no matter which teacher you work with, you have to give up your perspective to do that. So you're cultivating that ability each time you meet a teacher. Maybe you're giving up your perspective to meet someone who can't see you at all because they are seeing you completely, because they're seeing the formless essence that's creating both of you from nothing. You know, that's a great person to give up your perspective to. Or maybe you're giving up your perspective to someone who can't see you because they can only see themselves and the stuff that they're working with. Either way, it's the same thing. You're giving up your perspective to someone, something else, and that skill at least is the same. So you do this, you give it a shot. I'm going to give up my perspective, and two possibilities, right? Either it works, just to say you're fully enlightened, now you can join their lineage, or walk away, leave, whatever it is, whatever is appropriate, or it doesn't. And you know, good news, have now learned something. So you've learned, you know, we've learned, okay, I'm stuck here. You know, I'm not fully able to receive this person's perspective because of this. Great. Now I know what I need to work on. Thank you. Whatever it is, maybe it's ignorance, they have something to offer you and you can't receive it. Maybe it's they're asking you to let go of something and you can't because it's really important to hold on to that. It happens really often, you know. I can't let go of that, it's really important. I want to hold on to this. Maybe I don't even know why I'm holding on to it, but I am. Thank you for showing me that. Regardless, you get to see the next step in the path, and each teacher is like that. So if you cultivate the skill of working with unskilled teachers, then you get to work with every teacher you meet, and you get to meet everyone as a teacher. So you get to benefit from every single person you meet, every single circumstance you encounter. If you want to say that circumstances are their own teachers, then here you are. Good news. So I thought for the practice portion of the evening, I would do my best to give you a taste of the types of practice that I was doing over the last few weeks. So I'm going to split it into 2 parts, and we're going to do 2 different practices in the 2 parts. So the first part, we're going to do my best attempt at the sort of training that I was doing at Tahoma. I'll do my best to lead us in that. And the second part, I'll do my best to pay an homage to Shinzen. And so basically, we'll start by cutting off all thinking, and then we'll work with embracing and enjoying thinking. And just see what your experience of that is like. And then there will be a movement period in the middle. So here we go. From wherever you're sitting right now, or whatever posture you're in now, see if it's possible to align your posture by having each vertebra stacked on top of each other vertebra, the one below it, so that your spine is straight and tall and balanced. And the top of your head pushing up towards the sky, the back of the top of your head pushing up the sky, and the root, the base of your spine, rooting into the ground, or into your seat, or into your posture. And begin to extend the exhale. So with each breath out, exhale fully. Let all the air out. And as you do this, count your exhales. Count your breaths from 1 to 10. And when you get to 10, start over. And as you do this, breathe with intensity. Put all the energy you have into each breath. use this breath, use this posture, use your whole body to cut off all thinking. Completely forget yourself. Forget the world. Forget everything. We can't use our minds for this. If there's any energy going into thinking, then good news. That's more energy you can throw into the breathing. See if you can tie the count to the exhale. Make the sound in your head of the count for the full duration of each breath. Like this. as we transition into a movement period, just work with keeping your attention low in your body. Keep your attention in your feet and the soles of your feet in contact with the ground. Move around, walk around in any way that you'd like to. And we'll meet back here in about 5 minutes. And now, feel free to practice any technique you'd like to work with. You can use the criteria of interest, opportunity, or necessity to decide on a technique, something you'd like to work with, something that's presented itself, or something that you have to work with, you have no choice. And if you like, feel free to turn your attention towards mind space. Notice your thoughts, and in particular, notice whether you're seeing or hearing what you're thinking. You may find that you can hear thinking. There's an inner monologue, or maybe it's multiple voices. Maybe there's a sense of many voices, like a stadium of people murmuring below the audible threshold. Or just a slight tug in the direction of inner talk space. A place where you would hear thinking. If any of that's going on, that counts as inner talk, and you can label it here. And you may notice that you're imagining, that you're thinking in images. You may see people, objects, places, memories from the past, plans for the future. Or you might notice a kind of shimmering, scintillating flow in the place where images would be. Or you might notice just a slight tug in the direction of image space, of the inner screen, where visual thinking happens. If any of that's going on, that counts as inner image. And if you like, you can label that C. It's possible that there's neither image nor talk right now. And if that's the case, then you can label that rest. And appreciate that moment of inner quiet. And it's also possible that both image and talk are happening at the same time. If so, then you can appreciate that moment of covering mind space and label that see here. And without any preference, without trying to get anything or trying to get rid of anything. The 4 possible labels are rest, see, hear, and see here. And see if you can make an even rhythm of labels at your own pace, every few seconds or so, or whatever feels natural to you. And of course, if you're making a label, then that label is itself an instance of inner talk. But no need to label that label. So simply allow it to happen. But for now, don't label the labels. And if you're not sure, that's okay. Just guess. It's totally fine for any other experience to come up. It's fine to be aware of it. Just for now, simply let it be in the background and direct your foreground attention to mind space, to what you can see and hear in your own mind. And now, just for fun, selectively attend to inner images, focusing just on inner image space, setting aside talk for now. Two possible labels are see or rest. See for any image activity, whether it's vivid or unclear, or even just a tug in the direction of image. And rest for any absence of image activity, even if there's a lot else going on. You can notice that in this moment, there's no image activity. And appreciate that as a kind of rest. And now, just for fun, turn your attention towards inner talk, setting aside inner image for now. The two possible labels are hear or rest. Hear for any inner talk, whether it's gross or subtle, or even just a tug in the direction of talk space. And rest for any lack of talk. Now, attend to both image and talk, the combined mind space. And the four possible labels: rest, hear, see, or see here. And if you find that you get lost, it's too confusing, at any time you can return to just hearing, just seeing, or focus on both of them, making labels as we've been doing. But if you like, if you decide to do it now, see if it's possible to hold your attention over all of mind space. Keep some awareness on the inner screen where images would happen. Keep some awareness in the place where inner talk would happen. Without trying to label, simply do your best to hold the whole of mind space in attention. You may find this easier than noting mind states. Less to do, less to worry about. Or you may find it more difficult. Either way is fine, but just give it a shot. Experiment with it. And as you do this, you may notice that there's a lot of flow or movement. Thoughts are moving around a lot, coming and going. You may notice that there's a lot of restfulness, not much activity going on. You may notice that as each thought appears, it immediately vanishes. The thoughts don't persist, they don't play out over time. You may find that wisdom mind emerges. Thoughts are self-organizing on their own, without any thinker, without you doing it. If any of those is happening, then great. Appreciate that. And if not, nothing wrong with that. Just continue to cover mind space, or note mind states, or note just seeing or just hearing internally. So feel free to keep going with that, or do any other technique you like, or simply coast on the momentum you've built, and let's engage in some discussion. So this is a time for questions, comments, reports, anything else that you'd like to talk about.
So during the extending your exhale thing, you placed it in the context of cutting off all thought, but I noticed that in order to maintain the extended exhale, there needed to be some kind of thought that's like extended exhale, like some process, as opposed to just sitting and doing nothing and let the breath just doing what it will. So I wanted to know if you had any, if maybe it was more natural to just sit and let the breath breathe.
Yeah, right. Yeah, so definitely you're doing something. And you're doing something that your mind is involved in to some extent. But then if you're just sitting there, and letting the breath happen, you could say two possibilities, right? Either the breath is just happening with no involvement from your mind, and you're done. You can go open up a center now and start teaching people. Or the breath is happening and your mind is going, and there's thoughts happening. And one of the things that I started to appreciate on the last training session is that the way that you breathe actually influences your thoughts. It actually supports your thoughts. So the normal way that we have of breathing that we think of as natural is actually a type of breathing that allows and supports and cultivates thinking. It sort of maintains our mind, maintains our thought loops, our patterns. And to breathe in any other way, and specifically in this other way, we're breathing in a way that no longer maintains that. So it's forced, it's artificial, it's not natural, but it isn't the type of breathing that supports your mind. And so if you just do it fully and continue to do it, your mind will gradually loosen its hold. And I haven't yet experienced the mind falling off. People have just told me about that, so it's just my opinion that might happen at some point. But certainly you can clearly see as you switch to different types of breathing that it has an influence on your mind, has an influence on your thinking, and that in particular that type of breathing attenuates or loosens up or weakens the mind. So it's not natural, but it's more natural, you could say, than the type of breathing that we think of as natural, from some perspective, in some manner of speaking.
Can I ask a question about thinking and observation? Is observation thinking?
Is observation thinking? I will let you know once I've ended all thinking. For now, I'm not sure.
Good question. What role
Good
does
question.
Observation play in the first method, and what role does it play in the second method? Your observation.
So, it's kind of there. It's there. In both cases, it's present and sort of happening. In the first case, the main thing that I'm observing is other stuff is coming up, and I'm finding myself able to redirect it into the breath. Does that make sense? Like a thought emerges.
Sounds like will. I mean, one is observing, and the other is saying, "Oh wait, redirect."
Yeah, right.
That's different. That's thinking.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
But
so
the
there's
observation is just noticing what's happening.
Yeah, right. So I'm noticing myself doing the technique and noticing that there are things coming up and redirecting. So I'm aware of all of that, you could say. And then in the second technique, it's straight observation, right? It's the instruction is just observe the mind.
So the first one has direction. There's observation and then redirection to just the breath.
At least the way I'm practicing it. I don't make any claims to be practicing it well or correctly or anything like
I
that.
was just trying to understand.
Yeah. Did that clear it up at all, or?
A little bit. Yeah.
Okay. Anything else?
Not now.
Okay. Thanks. Margaret.
Well, during the first part, the breathing, I observed that it was exhausting. And so then I felt like, okay, I want to get this out breath over as quickly as possible.
Uh-huh.
That felt like cheating.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
But I was pretty tired. And so I could sort of then go back and forth, let's say from like the longer out breath that you demonstrated, although I will say thank you for that demonstration, because that really gave me a more realistic sense of how the out breath would go. You know, maybe I was trying too hard, making it too long, and then I got really worn out by doing that, and kind of lightheaded. I wondered if people ever fall out of their chair.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And so then I said, because I was tired, I think, and kind of breathless, I was like, okay, I've got to get these out breaths over with. So then I would pick up the pace a little bit, and then I'd sort of have a recovery period and could go back to the longer out breath. I had to kind of go between those two things.
Yeah.
Kind of like you would in exercise, like a burst of exercise and then a burst of recovery kind of thing.
Yeah, right.
So is that short out breath, is that cheating?
So I don't know, but so basically my sense of it sounds like you were so you were breathing and then you noticed that it was tiring, you were really exhausted, so then you would kind of like switch to a shorter out breath for a while to recover, and then find that you were able to go with a longer breath. Yeah. And then kind of like oscillating, like going back and forth. Yeah. So I have no idea whether it's cheating or not. I should say, by the way, that this, I am in no way qualified to teach Zen. So I'm, just sort of showing you a technique from my own experience, but I'm definitely not at a point where I can speak authoritatively on it, if that makes sense. So I can sort of show you what I've learned, but the gaps.
I will
are...
say though that I think all of that was observation, not necessarily, because I wasn't thinking about other things. I was thinking about the practice, right? And I did have to think at a moment there to decide. When I got lightheaded, I was like, okay, what are you going to do about this?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I will say that I noticed myself doing that a lot as I was working with it. That I just, I'm okay, well, I'm going to need to take a shorter breath now. I'm walking and I'm kind of winded or something. Or even just I've been doing this for a while and it's real hard. There are pointers. So there's, the Roshi at one point said to breathe with your core, so with your core muscles and your pelvic floor rather than your diaphragm. And that totally revolutionized it for me, to find that I didn't have to use the diaphragm to breathe, that I could use my core muscles, but it's still a workout. And actually Shinzen had some interesting stuff to say about that technique as he understands it. And so the way that he put it is, what you're basically doing with it is you are gradually acclimatizing yourself to the sensations of oxygen starvation. As he put it, actually, so it's specifically carbon dioxide buildup, but same difference for us. We experience it as though we're suffocating. And so one of the things that's happening is that we're experiencing that suffocation gradually, slowly, bit by bit, so that we can get a taste of it, get used to it, feel okay with it. And then also basically depleting the oxygen so that our minds just don't have the ability to function anymore. So, we're not going to die doing that technique. We're going to, at absolute worst, I imagine we're going to like pass out and then the autonomous systems kick in and take over. But, he was saying basically, you're doing this and then you're going to be on the edge of fainting at a certain point. And as you're doing that, you're equanimizing that. You're working through the need to breathe.
A goal of practice.
Yeah.
Quantumizing.
Yeah, yeah.
And I did kind of think about it as, okay, if I'm sort of evaluating the practice and what's going on inside me, I thought of that a little bit more like we don't label the labels.
Mm-hmm.
So I tried not to get all caught up in thinking about how I was managing the practice.
Yeah.
So that I didn't fall out of my chair.
Yeah.
Although my automatic system might kick in before that actually happened.
Yeah. Mm.
So that's how I sort of kind of let myself off the hook maybe by saying, well, I'm not labeling the label.
Yeah.
So I'll just try and go back to breathing.
Cool. Yeah, that's great.
I did have a little moment, I'll just say this briefly, is that I did this summer watch my mother breathe herself to death.
Mm.
It did bring back a lot of that kind of stuff in my mind, and I thought,
Yeah.
this is pretty hard.
Yeah. Yeah. It's brought up some
Some
real
feelings,
stuff.
But
Yeah.
I let them go on the out breath.
Yeah.
She set a perfect example for me this summer. So I can do that.
Wow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
very profound.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, as you know, I've not really been able to do any thought observation techniques very, very well.
Mm.
During this, though, I had a moment where, so usually when I lose the thinking, it's just I'm gone and I'm lost in thought.
Mm-hmm.
It's upsetting. But this time it felt more like a discovery moment.
Mm.
Like, okay, something wild is happening right now. If I can't even identify it, so like, what is it?
Oh, cool.
And then I saw what was actually happening, and I felt this intense pleasure like through my body.
Uh-huh.
And it just felt like this sense of control. Maybe it was like the sense of a real me, perhaps, that kind of thing.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so it was awesome.
Cool.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Great. So you so you were able to bring some sense of like playfulness, excitement, wonder to the practice. Like, all right, this has got me in its grip, so it must be really interesting. It must be like, what's going on here, kind of thing. And then saw it. So that's cool. Great. Yeah. Yeah. Anything else? Mm-hmm.
I had some similar experiences, and it was interesting. I found the first practice to actually be more invigorating for me, and just awake, but yet breathing. And so sometimes I tend to, my body will lie and rest.
Yeah.
And I'm good there. and the second practice, when following thought, I found thought more easily brought me to that rest.
Mm-hmm.
And I was tempted, wanting to just go, like I found myself doing 80-20
Mm-hmm.
in a way. needed more energy.
Yeah. So you were you were getting energy from doing the breath technique. Like it's it's a great feature of it in my experience as well. And it's sort of whatever problems you have, falling asleep isn't usually one of them if you're doing it. But then so you were able to be invigorated, but then you switched into the thinking technique, and then you were basically starting to fall asleep kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so you by 80-20 you mean like you could you were able to like keep most of your focus on your thinking, but then some on your body.
I needed to reconnect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. And then did you try going fully into thinking for a while and
I did, but then
started drifting? Yeah. Yeah, cool. Yeah. Yeah, very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's I don't know that I have any advice or anything. That sounds like a skillful move to make that shift.
I also had the thought of cheating.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Breathing is cheating. I don't know about that.
Yeah, that's one of the interesting contrasts between the way that the Roshi and Shinzen teach. That with the Roshi, there's just one way to do it, and every exact detail of it is spelled out for you, and whether you're doing it or not. So it's pretty straightforward. And then with Shinzen, it's more like you practice however you want, whatever you want. So switch techniques, bring in the body if it seems like it's necessary, which it sounds like it was. Basically, it's much more user-friendly, or you're sort of in much more a position of like active driver, rather than just I will perform this form completely.
I didn't want to be the active driver.
Yeah, it's annoying.
Yeah, it was like so lovely
Yeah.
to just breathe and to really. It was interesting when you said core and pelvic floor, because that's what I felt.
Yeah.
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 And it was just like, it felt like a practice. It felt like a yoga practice. It felt.
Yeah.
I was like, and then more ease to not. I couldn't think of anything else. It was just that once I fully gave to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
It's
I got my palms are sweating, kind of reliving talking about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. I mean, that's definitely. I think that's a real advantage of that way of working.
Yeah. It's fun.
Yeah. It's just there's no choice.
Right.
But then to be able to be in a place where you're willing to do something where you don't have a choice, that's significant, and that can take some work. Yeah,
I
thank
thought
you.
the two practices, I wondered if they weren't really working together, because I felt much more grounded in my feet and just very in a state of stillness while I did the second method.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I thought the first portion may have contributed to that.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah, I think they really do work together.
It's amazing.
Yeah, they and the way that Shinzen's talking about it is it's sort of bringing that same so there's this characteristic quality of Zen practice, which is this kind of free-flowing, fluid movement without any mover kind of thing. It's just happening, and it's beautiful, and you're sort of manifesting impermanence, and it's bringing that same quality into the mind, into the thinking process. Is the ultimate direction of that technique. To be thinking without thinking, be thinking without there being any you doing it. It's just happening. And so it's, I mean, I totally think they go together. I've been working with both of them lately in my own practice, and it's been amazing.
Do you feel that stillness, that deep quiet in your body?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, thanks. Mm-hmm.
I felt the first practice, I found it very relaxing,
Mm.
because I like emptiness very much.
Mm-hmm.
So I really loved the emptiness of it. And I also found the second practice could be something that I could use more as I'm going through my day.
Mm-hmm.
And the first practice more when I was just sitting.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess those are my observations.
Yeah.
But I enjoyed them both very much, and I do think they worked really well together. I mean, it didn't feel like a contrast or, a difficult transition at all. It felt very natural.
Yeah.
I'm fascinated about the breath that supports the mind and the breath that cuts off the mind,
Mm-hmm.
and how, and if there have been studies done about that. Or,
Yeah. Huh.
yeah, I think that's really interesting
Mm-hmm.
and a very, it's a very revolutionary idea.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, huh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It seems like a very important concept
Mm-hmm.
to know.
Mm-hmm.
How to think about breathing.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, totally. I'm really curious if you find any studies, and if I find any, I'll let you know.
Yeah, I'll look.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool.
Well, certainly there's the study of pranayama and over centuries
Mm-hmm.
and how it changes the mind.
Mm-hmm.
So there's all that, thousands of years of experience.
Mm-hmm.
So, but in terms of modern research, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
What's the name of the practice you studied?
Pranayama, it's breath practice in yoga. And it's just altering the way that you breathe in order to affect your mind.
I really enjoyed the first practice. I felt my body adjusting to I don't know if it was too much oxygen or too much CO2, but it was some kind of adjustment that I was making. And then when you suggested counting, like count long out, like that. I started doing that. And when I actually started doing that, I just kind of dropped into this thing where I was just, I was observing myself breathing out and breathing in and counting, but I wasn't thinking about anything.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't particularly drop into anything deep, stillness or anything like that. But I'm pretty sure it was restful, and I think I'm having a really bad day today with back pain, and so that was in the background during that practice. And in the second practice, I couldn't get beyond being distracted by the pain, and I was just pretty much, that was shot for me. But the first one, so that breathing is really very powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah, to put that pain in the background, or even if it was only 10 minutes, it's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Incredible.
Mm-hmm.
So you were just able to breathe and forget about it to some extent.
Yeah, just put it in the background. I was just focused on breathing, in your directions, and so I was just found myself observing what I was doing, but that's why I've kind of picked up on observing. Lots of times when I observe something, I got an opinion about it. I got some thoughts, but this time I was observing it, and there was nothing but observing it.
Yeah.
You know, I observed that I wasn't thinking while I was observing.
Yeah.
I don't know about that, but yeah, I was just, it was great. It was very good for me. Thank you.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you.
The healing breath.
Yeah.